Welcome to Opening the Bedroom Doors. My name is Jessie Fresh. I am a sex and intimacy coach, and we're going to be revealing what everyday people do in their bedroom that you never thought they did. So you can discover more of what fulfills you, more of what you've always desired, and you can develop and become more of who you are fully in your sexuality. So I'm going to be doing this twice a month, and I'll be opening my little black book of sexperts, and we're going to be discussing these sizzling topics. So if you're enjoying this content, make sure to comment and agree with us when you feel called to do so in the chat. We'll also have a live Q&A. It's a little bit more of a background about me. I work with women and couples as an intimacy coach, and my main goal is to help them create a deep, intimate connection with mind-blowing sexual pleasure. So I often hear in my practice that people are embarrassed of their desires, and therefore they hide their desires. And my intention with this show is to show you that you're not alone, that it's okay to explore. And since we don't know what's going on behind closed doors, we're going to share what's possible. So today we have the incredibly seductive Iris Ives, and we have been really good friends for, I think, almost a decade. And I've got to watch Iris perform and blossom into this vixen that they are, and I have been seduced by her many times. So let's welcome Iris. And Iris, could you share with the viewers who you are and what you do?
Iris Ives, this is my kitty Sean. I'm sure she'll be in and out of this video the entire time because she is also a total slut for attention. I like to say, you're just like your mama. I am a queer femme, poly, kinky, sex worker, stripper in Portland, and also a teacher of classes such as Lap Dances 101, Sensual Touch, and beyond. It's continuing to grow, which is really exciting. And I've been dancing at strip clubs in Portland for a little over 2.5 years and performing, doing burlesque style performances, stripping, acrobatics, contortion for about 6 years. And I have been really enjoying my experience of kind of exploring what sensuality is for me, exploring what seduction means to me, and how I experience that in my normal daily life, but also how I experience that in work and performance.
Awesome. Cool. And can you tell us tell us the story of how you got introduced to this art form?
Yeah, it feels like a whole long journey.
Yeah.
And I just had an experience of describing this to a friend of mine. Because for me, sex work and seduction has really come from a space of as a younger person, I felt this deep fire in me to feel desired and desirable, not only to myself, but from other people and from whoever I'm engaging with, and also just the act of feeling desirable for me. And I would say that my journey in exploring that has really come from dating world and understanding my relationship to others and seeing the ways in which my desire to be desired was not healthy in certain relationships as a younger person that didn't understand how to healthily create boundaries, how to healthily communicate, how to healthily engage in sexual dynamics in the way that now I know how to do in a way that feels really good and healthy and safe. And the way that I took that knowledge and learning to help me grow into understanding the way to utilize that fire of desire and sensuality and seduction has really been in the performance art. world and in the sex work world. And that has been like my like gift from the universe or gift from society in a way, where I'm just like, oh, I can actually utilize this feeling in myself in ways that feel super good to me, and also seem to feel really good to the people that I'm working with, and seem to feel really good to the people that I'm performing for. And that has manifested in strip clubs and in sex clubs and performances, and also just developing relationships to my customers and clients at the clubs as well.
Oh, I love that like you had such a strong desire to be desired. I think that that's something that's so relatable for people. And I love that like performing brings out this part of you, and in a way it creates healthy boundaries as well. Like when I've seen you perform, there's very much the audience and then there's you, and you get to interact, and it's everyone in the space has consented to that experience. So part of what I was thinking preparing for this is like, how do we give people a healthy message of like when to seduce, what seducing is, and what it's not? So that's my next question is like, what shows up for you in that?
Oh my God, so much. I was doing some research around like where the word seduction came from,
Yeah.
and also what our society, different parts of our society have a different relationship to seduction, of course. But like, what does the greater culture associate seduction and desire with? And what I saw was that, like, as far as definition goes of seduction and seducing someone,
Yeah.
has this association to like you are attracting someone in this way that is like you're making them like you, and you're seeing what they want, and you're shape shifting yourself into their image of beauty and their image of what they're desiring and their image of what they want, and you're like, I am that, I'm going to make you want me and like me. And that gives me such a gross taste in my mouth, because that is like the exact opposite of like a consensual experience, and also the exact opposite of authentic expression of self.
Mm.
And so for me, like, there, it gets really tricky when you bring in sex work and people paying you for a service, because there is some level of that for people, of course, where someone's like, hey, I would love it if you could make me this video of you. Like, I had someone recently who was like, I want you to make this video of like you giving blowjobs to dildos, and the theme of it would be like you shaming me for like my body, and like you just tell me how like all of those cocks are way better than mine. And I was like, cool, that's not a thing that I'm like necessarily turned on by, but like I'm stoked that you like that, and that brings you joy, and that you trust me in this experience for me to show up and create this piece of like media and this piece of art in a way that feels good for me, but also that is made for you and what you desire. And so like that's the sort of like shapeshifter dynamic that I feel like can be really healthy. But I think when that's brought into normal daily life, where you're just changing your behavior, you're changing the way you look, you're changing how you act or what you do to feel or be attractive to someone, or to seduce someone into like doing something that you're desiring. Um, that doesn't feel good to me. And that's also just like a surefire way to enter into manipulation and abusive relationships. So I do think that there is like this very complicated dynamic that can exist in like the art of seduction, right? Where it is like, how can you be this like seductive, beautiful, attractive person? And that means literally a million different things.
Right.
There is no like one way to be attractive to someone, or like here's like 3 steps to like find the person that you're wanting, you know?
The competition.
Absolutely. And so I think that like finding yeah, finding the ways in which, like, if you're looking at seduction and that you're like wanting to explore seduction and sensuality and sexuality and attraction and desire, it's like understanding what that means to you
Mm-hmm.
and allowing everyone else that you interact with to have their own definition of that, to
Mm.
have their own desires, to have their own boundaries, and to not try to puzzle piece everything together to just make it fit, but rather like, no, how does this naturally fit into each other? How can I fit in with this person? Does it work? Does it not? And just being really curious and inquisitive of that.
Mm. Well, that's a beautiful point. Like finding the things that feel really aligned with you and who you are as like the first step. That's like one before we suggest that people are like, yeah, like you listen to this, now you're gonna go to like the grocery store and you just practice your seducing. No, that's not like the message here. I would even suggest like that a really fun activity is practicing seducing yourself first.
Mm-hmm.
I have had so much fun playing with that concept that I am going to like set aside some time and seduce myself. And then also I play with the idea of seducing an audience, like an imaginary audience. I think something about that fantasy, because it's anything goes in your imagination, and playing with that can be such a fun way to tap into different parts of your eroticism and feel that like power and energy. So you kind of like slip it on, try it on a little bit, get your toes wet or other things wet, and then you can try that on in bigger formats, like with consenting partners or like performances and things like that.
Absolutely. I think that's a really great place to always start
Seduce
with
yourself.
attraction and sexuality. It's like when we look at sexuality or sensuality or seduction as like, how do I get this person, then
Right.
it doesn't really become about like you and your experience anymore, and
Mm-hmm.
what brings you joy and what feels comfortable for you and what fits in for you. And like, I think there is this like really toxic perspective that we are like consistently fed through society of like, in order to be desirable, you need to look like this.
Mm-hmm.
You need to like talk this way. You need to dress this way. You need to buy these things. And I think that like the more we can just like let go of that
Mm-hmm.
and let go of like all of the bullshit of like, these are all of the things that you need to be prescribed in order to be like a beautiful person and for people to like you and
Mm-hmm.
for you to get sexual experiences, etc. You
Mm-hmm.
know, the more we can just like throw that away and be like, no, what brings you joy, what allows you to feel desire, what attracts you in other people,
Mm-hmm.
and like fine tuning your own relationship to yourself, I think is huge.
Mm-hmm.
Especially because like if you look at it in that way where you're like focusing on like your own autonomy, it allows you to also like hopefully understand and recognize that like the power is in other people having that same level of autonomy, that same level of choice, that same level of like, this is like what I'm looking for, instead of trying to create this story of like, I want this, therefore you need to be that for me.
Yeah. I see that so much in you when you perform. It's like you have such a authenticity when you do perform and when you move that it automatically draws people into you, I think, because you're rocking your own thing. You're not doing any prescribed bullshit of any kind. And the way that you're rocking like that authenticity in yourself just makes people immediately like, whoa, where did you come from? And what are you? And then that brings in a lot of mystery. And plus you're super provocative in that like just standing in your own essence. Like you
Thank you.
meet people by making eye contact, you'll go straight towards them and you just seem cool, calm, and collected.
Mm, thank you so much. That is so sweet as a reflection. I really appreciate that. And like that means a lot to me to hear, because that's something that like as a performer and as like a stripper and sex worker, that's been so huge for me, to get really solid on, and that's taken a lot of time to understand, is that process of like, who am I really in my experience with like my body, and
Right.
sharing it with others.
Yeah.
And that's been just huge in all of the ways, where I walk into a room, like I walk into the velvet rope and I'm like, okay, I'm here as a performer, and that's like a different power dynamic, of course, where I'm like, I'm walking into this space knowing what my role is and that it's different than the people who are just like showing up here, right?
Yeah.
And that's important to be
Yeah.
aware of, as far as boundaries go, as far
Yeah.
as like the way in which I connect with humans in general, the way I like show up in myself and
Mm,
how I'm being witnessed.
mm,
And I like to really like, as far as like my performance goes, they're all very like, I'm just gonna like move and dance and like be here. And I kind of like forget almost that like the audience is there, as far as like, I'm usually just like in my own body and my own movement. And then I'm like, I see you over there
you
seeing
do
me.
awaken the gun. Yeah.
And there's something so beautiful about like being witnessed
Hmm.
and being trusted in that space of like, I'm creating this experience with you.
Yeah.
And I don't take that lightly at all. Or I'm like, you're in this space with me, you're trusting me to like be safe and take care of myself and take care of you. And
Mm,
like you were describing earlier around consent, of being in a like a space as a performer, it's like, sure, absolutely, people are consenting to being in this space with me, but they're
mhm.
also not consenting to like everything that I choose to do,
Yeah.
right? And so in my like seductive nature around like performance, I'm like, okay, how can I like keep myself and you safe? The
Mm,
way that I can do that is by being contained in my space, and also engaging with you in ways that like, looking over at you, or I'll check in with someone before a performance, be like, can I do a headstand on you? Is that okay? And they're like, hell yeah. Oh my God, what?
You mind
Like,
eating carrot cake off my ass?
is that okay?
Story. Yes. Where yes, that's okay.
Like frosting off of me? Will you
Yeah.
later? But there's something so beautiful about like, I'm creating this relationship.
Mm,
I'm not just like here doing my thing and you're just there. It's like, no, we're here together
mm,
and we're creating an experience together.
mm.
And that's huge. And like, that takes consent, that takes trust, even if it's just like this moment of like hoping that you can trust me because you don't know me and you can't actually trust me.
Mhm.
But like that, to me, I try to look at like, anytime I'm engaging with someone in any sort of sensual experience, whether it's me performing, me stripping, me one-on-one with someone at a play party, whatever, it's like, how can I be really aware of my own intentions, my own desires, my own boundaries in really strong ways?
Mhm.
And as long as I feel super solid in myself with that, which takes a lot of time and a lot of self work and a lot of energy to do,
Yeah.
then I feel safer in engaging with others.
Mm.
And others feel safer engaging with me because I know where I'm at.
Yeah.
And I can be like, no, actually, I'm not interested in that. Or, hey, do you want to go play right now? And like feeling really, I think confidence in that sort of experience really comes from a lot of inner self work and inner self discovery, and a lot of conversations like around like, what do you want in sensual experiences?
Mm,
Like, how can you feel safe?
mm.
What are the things you need in order to feel safe and comfortable in situations with other humans that's vulnerable,
Right.
and hold really strong to that? Or if you don't know quite like the level of like strength around that, you're like, I don't know what I want, being vulnerable and saying you don't know,
Mhm.
and being open with people and sharing like, I'm not really sure yet, I'm open to like learning and discovering and playing and exploring, but like, it's going to take me some time, or I might need to have a lot of conversations with you, or I might need to have a lot of conversations with myself.
Ooh,
uh,
I love that.
Huge.
Yeah. So I like had this little like flag go up when you said that when it's helpful to know what role you're in. And I find that has been so helpful for me as well. Like when it's not just like you can just step into like your inner seductor seductor, seductress, whatever that is, your inner seducer.
Mhm.
And that's what you had mentioned earlier of owning your authenticity and your desire. But then also picking a role has been my favorite part of that. Like when I get to sit down and be like, all right, I'm going to seduce all of you imaginary people in my bedroom right now in this audience, I then step into it more. Or when I've had a performance, I've been like, oh my God, I'm going to seduce people. That means I need to be like rock solid in my
Mm.
role. And so can we talk a little bit about like cultivating, like what are some of the roles that you put on to step into it?
Absolutely. I think it's a really fun question
Yeah,
because especially a lot of what I'm calling back to is like my work because that's like my main experience with like the art of seduction or attracting people or just engaging in like sensual experience. I have such a deep association to
right.
that. So as far as like the way in which I do that and see people doing that at clubs, at strip clubs, is oftentimes people either develop a persona that's completely different than their true self,
Yeah.
or a persona that is like fully them authentically, like just it's just I'm this is my daily human and I'm just not going to change because either I don't want to or it makes me feel unsafe to or it feels silly to.
Yeah.
um or just some other reality as well. For me, I kind of oscillate between like I'm just going to be my like normal daily self,
Hmm.
because that just feels more comfortable and useful for me. But I also notice that I put on these different like personality traits of myself that aren't like not me, but pieces of myself that I try to like pull to the forefront or highlight a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I've kind of like, I was just describing this to a coworker of mine where it's like, I know that when I put on my like big fur coat that has like a full hood, long sleeves, goes all the way down to my ankles, it's like, and I'm wearing 6-inch heels, so I'm about 6'3", and I'm just like a huge figure in the room where I'm just like towering over everyone, and I love it
Yeah.
because it makes me feel safe,
Hmm.
especially as someone that's been socialized as a woman
Hmm.
who's naked and vulnerable and
Hmm.
like on stage with a lot of men typically
Hmm.
in the room. I feel safe and I feel comfortable and I feel physically like larger. And so there's this like sense of power that comes up in me that really is like self-protective, but also that just feels like confident and powerful and like here I am. And the way that I walk through the room changes. It's
Mm.
like I'm walking in this like very like powerful, slow kind of like lioness sort of way.
Yes.
Um, that just feels really nice.
Mhm.
And I've had people be like, when I saw you walk from the front door to the stage, I was like, that girl is gonna be good. I want to watch her. And I'm like, thank you so much. Um, but there's something in that that is like what they're witnessing is my like inner power and like confidence of like, no one can fuck with me here. Like no one, because it's kind of like this like mama person comes out where I'm like, no one can fuck with me here. Like I am in charge of my own body and I am in charge of my own space and my own experience. You know, it's just like very like protective.
Yeah.
Which can come in handy in a situation like that, where like maybe I don't feel super safe otherwise. Or maybe it's just like an energy that feels really nice to put on.
Mm.
So I noticed that's like a huge one for me. That is like that protective lioness, like mama vibe.
Yeah.
That's like I'm gonna be super sweet and easy to talk to, but I will fuck you up if you cross my boundaries.
I love that. That's so part of the work that I do with people in my intimacy coaching is that we can reclaim parts of ourselves that we've either hidden or disowned or like kept small. And
Mm-hmm.
so one of my own stories in that is that for a sex convention that I was a part of, I was asked to cultivate a part of me that felt that I had hidden it or hid it. And what came forward when I did this little like dropped in guided meditation that I take my clients through is I found that my inner seductress had been hiding. And so I wondered, like, okay, how would this part of me walk? How would it talk? What would it feel like really powerful in? And like, what kind of creature is it? What kind of archetype is it? And then from there, I was able to pull things together that made me feel more embodied in that. And then preparing to like present this to a stage, a room of like 400 people, it made it so much easier to connect to that part of me and be like, no, like you have felt your seductress like more than once in your life, but she has been hiding. So we're going to let her out today and we're going to let everyone see her. And it was really easy to step into like this panther type character that I had, because it it was me and it wasn't all of me at the same time. So I really identify with that persona work being like cultivated to feel like it's me and it's not me, and it feels safe to be in that persona.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point of like, we are really complex humans.
Yeah.
We're constantly changing all of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be like environmentally changing based off of how our life is shifting, but also as far as like intimacy goes, it's like one person might bring out a completely different part of you that you never knew existed. And
Mm.
that doesn't mean that it's not authentic. It doesn't mean that it's not you, right? It's just like, wow, this mirror that I'm standing in front of is showing me this side of myself, or that I actually really am interested in, like going, like it could be just like a normal thing, like I do really like riding bikes and now I'm super excited about that. Or it might be like, wow, I'm really excited about this fetish that they have. Or it might be like, actually I really don't like that. And I think that's such a beautiful experience of like being faced with making a decision, like you're saying, of I have this homework assignment and I need to show up. And so I need to really look inward and discover what is under the surface and what is wanting to come out here.
Ooh, love that. Yes.
And that's so beautiful. That's what's really powerful about like interpersonal dynamics and connections, right? Is that like we can see new options because everyone is completely different. And I think that's so powerful around like, you know, this topic of seduction, is that like when we see someone that we're interested in, or when we meet someone that we're excited about, or just like feel that initial innate like, there's like something about that person. I think it's a really just powerful experience to not only see like, what do I feel evoked in me
Mm.
when I see or interact with or touch this human, and how can I express that authentically? And what do I see happening in them when they're connecting with me, or when they see me, or when they touch me?
Mm.
And just like being really sensitive and like fine tuning your skills of just like being really soft and quiet and understanding of like, what does this actually mean to us? And how can we like see it for what it actually is, instead of what I want it to be or what I'm told it should be?
Mm. Beautiful. So I want to give people some boundaries in exploring this. And so what advice would you give someone wanting to enter into trying this on? Like what do you wish you would have known so that we would have to
Um,
do it?
yeah,
And by learning the
no,
lesson.
that's, I love that.
Yeah.
The theme for me of my year, like, and life, but my year really is just like boundaries, and communication. And I feel like I just keep coming back to it. Like in any lesson that I learn, I'm like, boundaries and communication. And that's like, again, boundaries with yourself and communication with yourself, but also whoever you're engaging with.
Right.
Because that can just make like the entire world of difference.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, if we are really quiet about this thing that we really want,
Mm-hmm.
it probably isn't going to happen,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And the more we either talk about it, or journal about it, or dream about it, or fantasize about it, the more we can just continue to understand like, what is it that's creating this desire in us to explore something new. And I think in like developing your own relationship to seduction or attraction or intimacy really comes from knowing yourself
Mhm.
and really taking the time to get to know, like, who are you and who do you want to be? um, and not not being like super hard on yourself about like what those things are, but rather just being really curious and like nourishing those parts of yourself. And like nourishing those parts of yourself takes a lot of time
Mhm.
and takes a lot of energy and takes a lot of just like curiosity and exploration and play and trying on things that might feel really uncomfortable and realizing that they worked or they didn't.
Yeah.
And I think that like what I've witnessed in you around like your sex coaching has been a lot of like just promoting people of just like just try things
Mhm.
and like don't feel shame around like the things that bring you joy or that bring you excitement or that make you feel curious. I love the statement, I'm not gonna yuck your yum. That's like my favorite statement around like sex and intimacy and sensuality is just like, don't yuck your own yum. You know, it's like,
Oh,
don't
I
let
love
other
that.
people tell you,
Mhm.
or don't let yourself tell you that like what you want is wrong or not okay, or how you feel powerful and how you feel sexy and how you feel desirable and attractive is wrong because it's not like what we're prescribed it should be.
Yes.
You know, it's like, of course, the only exception to that is like harming others or like being like a harm, like a deep harm to yourself, you know. But like, as far as like anything outside of that, it's just like, what do you want?
Yeah.
Your joy. What makes you feel sexy? And like doing that,
Yeah.
talking about it.
There's a part of me also that wants to mention to people that when you're trying this on, to like take it in baby steps. And when I mean that, I mean like break down the steps. So if you're like, oh my gosh, I really want to come into this more for myself, like doing it on your own first, maybe even like doing something that you are good at in that persona. Like I just thought, okay, if I'm going to like cook dinner in this persona because it feels comfortable and I'm by myself, and yet I can still practice like how I would move and feel really authentic in that, versus like being like, I'm gonna go out and like seduce my partner in public. That's like a far stretch and can create a lot of like nervous system freak out, like a vulnerability hangover. So
Mhm.
I just want to always remind you to like take small steps, make it small and winnable so that you can gain momentum in trying that. Put on one song and be like, all right, here we go. One song. I'm going to seduce myself in the mirror right now. Yeah, that's what I really I want to caution people.
And embrace the awkwardness that comes with that.
Yeah.
It's like anytime you try something new, it's kind of weird.
Yeah, like sex is silly. Like if you like slip and fall, like you can turn it into a fun moment, and working with that I think is super important.
Yeah. I think there's something so powerful to just like watching someone be their most authentic self that like regardless if it's silly or weird or strange, you're like, God, that's just so hot. The way that you blah blah blah, you know, it's like I get so turned on by watching people do whatever they're good at, like in general, like
I like that.
it could be anything where I'm like, God, you're like fixing that computer and it's just so hot. What? Like I'm like confused that I have a boner about, you know, it's like it's just so there's something to just like witnessing someone and just like be them. But I
Yeah.
think like for me the most powerful way to seduce someone is just like by doing what you can and like what you do and just like making it hot, you know.
Yeah.
I think there's so many options for exploring that.
Ooh, next time I think that I'm doing something that I'm good at, I'm going to like really ham it up and make it like, ooh, I'm going to start taking more pride, I guess, in the things that I do well and be like, yes, I'm really good at vacuuming these stairs right now.
Yes.
Yes, watch me. That's just one idea, but all of the other ways in which I feel good at things, I want to bring that out and encourage everyone else to do that as well.
I love that.
Yeah. So, what do you feel like if you were like driving down the freeway and there was a billboard and you wanted to like have your message about seduction and the art of seduction, what do you think it would say and why would it say that?
Um, I would say that my dream billboard
Yeah.
on the highway of life, as far as seduction goes, it'd be like seduction, the desire of the authentic self.
Mm, that.
Because I think that that's really like that's all it is. That's like the only thing that really truly works outside of like what we're force fed is just like, who are you? Because you are like so many people's cup of tea. It's just like that's I think the thing that I've learned like the most through stripping is that like no way in hell am I everyone's cup of tea. Nor do I want to be. That sounds exhausting.
Yes.
Like, so if I like walking out, I was like, everyone wants to talk to me. Like, that would actually be pretty exhausting. Like, that'd be great money, but like, you only have
It's
so
less
much
attractive
time.
though, I think, because you're not as like you're not owning your confidence. It's like a sense of neediness. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's something to just being like, I am going to be someone's cup of tea.
Yeah.
And hopefully they're mine, you know? And if that's how it works, great. And if I'm not and it doesn't work out, great. Like that's life. That's relationships. Like I think that there is like this really negative perspective of like relationships being either successful or not,
Hmm.
and or experiences of people being successful or not. It's like, cool if it like lasts forever and you get married and you have kids and you buy a house and like all of the things, and like you die next to each other on the same day, successful relationship, you know. But anything like other than that is just like, oh, sorry,
Mm.
that didn't work out. It's like, no, like I could meet someone and have a one night stand and be like, wow, that was so powerful.
I love that.
That was so beautiful. That was so nourishing. We were so in the moment.
Mm.
That person saw this part of me that I never felt seen in before. And now they're gone. How fucking cool that that was my experience, you know?
Next class we'll have you teach the how to have a one night stand. How to feel like it was the best
Maybe
one.
later after quarantine when we actually can do that.
Oh yeah, that part. Yes, yes. Well, I want to take some questions in case anyone has any. So if there are any questions that you have for B or for me or for everyone, type them into the chat box or unmute yourself.
How would I how would I choose to like just show up in my like sensuality and my seductiveness? I would say that like the way that I would do that is to just like ask myself, what do I want right now?
Mm,
Because for me, I really try to just like exist in like my moment
mhm.
and know that like what I want right now or what I feel right now is like really important instead of getting stuck in a story of like, how do I do this normally?
Mhm.
um, and just like really honing in on like my present experience,
Mm.
because that changes so much depending on like my mood and environment, um, body, etc.
Yeah.
um, and so I'd say like right now, like how I've been experiencing that, like, or how I would experience that right now, I would say that like because there is so much like self focus happening and like spending a lot of time alone, the
Yeah.
way that I feel like really connected to seduction is just like in my breath and in movement and in dance and just like slowly moving
Mm,
to like really sexy music
mm,
and just like existing in like that like closed eyed, like quiet, breathy, physical space.
mm.
Like that makes me feel like, "Ah, I love how that feels, you know, I just like feeling connected to my body."
Yeah. That was the first thing that came up for me too, is like what shows up when I want to seduce is like I need to be engaged. I need to have like I need to touch like the textures that I have on. I need to like feel the curves of my body. I need to have like tactile things going on that I can smell, that I can see, that I can not taste. I'm not bringing in taste yet. But my first thought is like, I'm going to start to touch my hair and like, yeah, how good does it feel to touch my hair? And then I'm going to like caress the curves of my body. And that's going to naturally, like what you said, activate your breath and just make you feel in the moment of like the yes, finding like the yum and the yes put together
Mm-hmm.
on exploration. So I see some questions. And so someone said, I'd love a demonstration of authentic seduction, which I think that we just kind of did that of like bringing in the music, like touching yourself and your curves and like playing into your environment and the things that you want. Does that feel checked?
Yeah, I I feel like there's so many times when I'm just like wanting to feel like sensual in my body where I'm just like lightly caressing myself and just being like in my body in this really like light, sensual, like tactile way that feels really good. And
Mhm.
just like sitting and exploring like how my body moves
Right.
and just like smushing my face into a pillow and like feeling how that feels, you know.
That's a new
Uh,
one for
and
me.
just like find like look around, like find different textures that can like create this sort of like textural experience for you in your own body, or play with your like your partner or partners and
Mm.
just have like one person have their eyes closed and just like create this like sensual experience for them and see how like they react to that or respond to that, and like ask each other questions like what do you want to like experience differently, and just like playing around with that I think is really fun.
I think when it's looked at like play, it's so much easier. Like, how can we play? And let's just have fun. And how can we play? And how
Yeah.
does it feel good? And what feels playful? What feels curious? What feels playful?
Hmm.
Ugh,
Yeah, I think games and activities are really fun to play around with.
um, Roy said, any ideas about how to reawaken seduction powers after a period of being wounded and losing access to that part of oneself? Love that question.
Love that too. Mm,
My first
yeah.
thought that shows up is so one of the most powerful times I have felt seductive is when I took time to heal from what I was wounded from. So pairing the healing, and then I paired it with celibacy. I recognized that I was so wounded at one point that I was seeking attention and love and validation from the wrong people, from outside of myself, and therefore wasn't acknowledging my own self-worth. So I really tried to practice. Like anytime I reached out to that toxic ex, I'd be like, oh God, what do I need? What can I do for myself? And in that process of celibacy with self love, I created some powerful fucking energy around that because seduction just like that sexual energy was flooding me. So, and that's something that yogis also say that when you take a vow of celibacy, like your ojas, the energy that's within you, starts to make your skin glow. And so that can be a really fun thing to play with, is like playing with the healing and then also like taking a step back to the point that you feel like a yearning show up. That's what's shown up for me. Is there anything that shows up for you in that?
Yeah, I really love and appreciate that question. Who was it that asked that?
Roy.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I really relate to that question too, because I currently am in a space of feeling really tender and like not available to connect with other people. And I noticed that for myself, I've been kind of grappling between like, I shouldn't be here. I'm dysfunctional. Like, I should be okay with connecting with other people. I've always felt comfortable connecting with other people, and just kind of like getting in my head of like, I need to be somewhere that I'm not
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
And I've really been so grateful for my therapist and my friends and reminding me that like, I don't have to be anywhere that I'm not
Mm.
right now. And that's so hard to remember, especially if it's not your normal or hasn't been your normal for a while.
Mm.
And so that's been really important for me to constantly like just tell myself over and over again, it's okay to be where I'm at. It's okay to feel hurt. It's okay to feel kind of awkward around like intimacy right now. Even if that means intimacy with yourself, like that's okay. And also I think that like if there is a desire for you where you're like, I get that, but like I'm ready to just like get the gears like rolling. I think there is like something in just like what Jessie said, of just like taking it really slow and just starting here. Like just start with your breath. Close your eyes and just breathe and see, how does it feel to just tune into my body?
Mm.
Or how does it feel to touch myself? What triggers does it bring up? What pleasure does it bring up?
Mm.
How does it feel to like walk past someone on the street and give them like eye contact? Does that feel scary? Does that feel vulnerable? Or does that feel really exciting? Do I feel confident there? Can I
Mm.
chat with someone online? You know, like just starting really slow and just like do a little thing and then take the time to look inward and be like, okay, how did that affect me? What is my inner response with that? And
Mm.
just be really gentle with
Mm.
you, because you don't need to be anywhere that you're not right
Mm.
now, at all.
Love that. Thank you. Someone asked, what do you think or do when your attempt at seducing isn't being received by a lover?
Ooh.
uh,
Talk about it. Talk about it. Like
yeah.
fully. I
Yeah.
can't even like count how many times I've experienced this or my friends have experienced this where they're like, this thing happened with my partner, and I'm like, cool, did you tell them? And they're like, no.
Mm.
I'm like, wait, what? And not saying that like that because the person asking that question doesn't talk about it, but I think that there's so much power in like, hey, when I do this thing with my shoulder, like that's me like trying to connect with you. Like how does that make you feel? Does that turn you on, or is it kind of weird, or does it feel fun? Do you not even notice that it's happening?
Mm-hmm.
And just like have an open dialogue about like what you're doing and what feels good for you, and seeing how that affects them or how their experience is.
Yeah.
And I think that there is like so much, again, like culturally fed information of like the more you talk the less sexy it is, or the less in the moment it is. But I think the more work that you can do in like throwing that perspective away and actually authentically connecting with your partner in all of the ways, including a shit ton of communication,
Yeah.
the more successful you both will be. Whether that's like you learn how to do that together, or you learn that actually it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And like either figuring out that like you can learn a new thing together, or you can learn about each other more, or maybe you just realize like, oh, we're just so different. There's such a large range of outcomes from just having a lot of communication, and like none of it's actually bad.
I love
Just
that part.
learning more.
There's been so many times, and I totally support that answer so much, because it's so important to check in with our own stories. We are going up to our person and we're like, all right, we got this whole agenda and it's not working. And actually in their mind, they could be like, oh man, I have like the worst pain in my body right now. Like I am not available for this. And so checking in and talking is so important. There have been so many times when I'm like, yes, I am feeling myself. I am going to do this. And then when it's not received, I could either choose to be like, oh, I'm not sexy. I'm not attractive. I'm not this, and project on myself. Or when I check in with my partner, they're like, yeah, I have really bad gas. And so like gas is not sexy, and you can't seduce anyone when they have gas. So it's super important to check in and to just see what emotionally is showing up and physically. Yeah.
Yeah, we're so good at storytelling,
Yeah, we are.
and taking everything personal, because everything feels so personal, and
Mm-hmm.
it's scary to be rejected.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's like the other piece of like practicing saying no to each other is huge. Just being
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, can I do this? And be like, no. And it's like feeling how that feels and like really getting used to that and learning that none of it is actually personal.
Yeah.
Like we really, I think, just as like a human culture, need to constantly as a whole get a lot better at supporting everyone in taking care of themselves
Yes.
and like feeling okay wanting what they want and not wanting what they don't want. And for it to be a like, thank you for saying no to me. Like that takes a lot. And that takes a lot of trust, and it takes a lot of like confidence and power and self-work to be able to tell someone that you love, no, I really don't want that right now. I know that you do, and I love you, and I like care, and like thank you so much for like asking, but like I really don't want that right now, or I don't receive that well, but I receive this well. Like I can't even like say how powerful, like I've gone from like being in relationships with people who just never tell me no. And like a part of my ego is like, they never say no to me and I feel like a princess, you know, but then like I actually don't feel safe in that situation.
Right. You can't trust
It
their
doesn't feel, yeah, it doesn't feel real to me. Even if it's, you know, it's like I can't judge their experience, but for me, hearing no from someone feels like the biggest gift. It doesn't mean it's not hard.
Yes.
Doesn't mean I'm not going to cry about certain things. It doesn't mean it's not going to feel personal sometimes, but like, thank you for saying no. Thank you for being honest with me. That's huge.
Yeah, I agree. So we have one last question. It's Leslie and Dave. If you're not in a monogamous relationship, it's easy to say, if I'm not your cup of tea, that's fine. That I'm someone else's cup of tea. But how do you reconcile that when there's one specific person that you're out to seduce? I've got an idea, but I'm curious what you think. So how do you reconcile that when there's one specific person that you're out to seduce, and they might feel like this is not their cup of tea?
I guess the question that comes up for me is that like, is it like, is the question asking like when I want to do this specific thing and they're not into it? Like, or if it's anything that I do to seduce them isn't working. So I think those are like two different questions that are coming up for me around that in particular.
Can you possibly clarify that, Leslie and Dave, in the chat, and we'll work with what we got so far? Part of what shows up for me is that like, so we're so dynamic. We have so many different parts within us that we can have that like panther seductress. When I did that meditation to find like what parts I've hidden, I had like an inner lumberjack. I had an inner like ballerina that was my like inner feminine. I had my panther. I had this like storm electric type of character. So I recognize that I have so many dynamic parts that can show up as really authentic, that if I am with a monogamous partner, this is how you can keep it real interesting, because you can show up more embodied in one of those. When I show up in my lumberjack, it's very different than when I show up in my panther.
Totally.
There's strengths to that.
Yeah.
Leslie said, my original thought was if what I wanted to do wasn't received the way I had hoped. Okay, this is from Dave. My original thought was if what I wanted to do wasn't received the way I hoped.
Yeah. A few things are coming up for me in that.
Okay.
One is I'm curious about like the communication that's happening of like, oh, like I felt disappointed, and if that like conversation happened, and I think that's really huge. And if there is like this really deep attachment to like that is the way that I really want to express myself and it's painful, that it's not being received. And I'm curious if there is some flexibility around that attachment, and if you can maybe shift it in a way that like the other person can receive it, if that feels really important for both of you to find a common ground around how you can both relate to that like specific activity or action.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think maybe just like playing around with different variety or timing even, and just
Mm-hmm.
having conversation about the details around
For
that.
sure.
And I'm also curious if that doesn't work for your partner, or it wasn't received in the way that you wanted it to, and like they like really can't receive it, and that's like a boundary for them. I'm curious if like your attachment to them being the person receiving that can shift, as far as not necessarily like looking for another partner or anything if you're in monogamy, but like, can you experience that with yourself? How can you embody that for you?
Mm.
Is that something that feels like exciting to you? Can you maybe make a sexy video where you're doing that thing, and that could be the way you're expressing that, and it doesn't have to be received by a particular person?
Mm.
Maybe it's just the expression that feels really healthy and helpful for you. um, or just playing around with like the flexibility around that and the creativity around it too, and just seeing what your options are. As far as the expression of, it's kind of hard to talk about it without like the details of what that is necessarily, but I'm curious about like the communication, it being for you or for them, and how you can just like create your own reality in that.
Dave was saying, I like that idea. It can be something I enjoy on my own if it's a big thing for me.
Yeah, thanks for asking that.
Yeah. So we are at our time. So I just want to kind of close up with, first of all, giving everyone a little homework assignment. So if you're up for the challenge, part of our homework for this, until next time, would be to experiment with practicing connecting and seducing yourself. So finding that part of you that feels really authentic, maybe even closing your eyes and just imagining, like, where did I lose this part of me, or how have I hidden it, or when has it shown up in the past, and what do I want to step into authentically? And then I'm going to check in with you next week, because next week we have the next show, which is inviting Caitlin V, the squirting expert. So Caitlin V is going to be on next Friday, and that will be at 11 a.m. until noon. And I'll give more information in the group, and hopefully this recording will be available in the group. And so Iris, what projects are you working on right now that they can know about that are like fun and exciting?
Yeah. Well, first, the way to contact me would be either through email at irisives@gmail.com, IRISIVES, at Gmail, or to follow me on Instagram. It's Daddy Iris, DADI_Iris. Um, and as far as like events go, I'm a little on hold because of everything.
Yeah.
But you always can keep up to date with me online, especially on Instagram, as far as performances go, as far as classes that I'm teaching. I'm in the works of hosting a class through Shebop, and also probably hosting an online class through the Velvet Rope. Most
On
likely
lap
a lap
dancing?
most likely lap dances 101 for couples.
Yes, that is an amazing class.
It's so much fun. And also, if you're interested in like hosting me as like a private teacher at all, I'm open to doing that. If you're wanting to learn some exercises around sensual touch, or if you're wanting to learn some ideas and tools around lap dances, please reach out to me. But yeah, I'll be posting some information soon about classes and offerings online.
Awesome. Thank you. I've taken that class. I got to be Iris's model for that. So I got to be lap danced on the entire time. And the outcome of the experience of the room was that everyone just felt so playful and at ease with learning how to do something that felt really scary to begin with. So if you're interested in that, I totally would encourage you to check it out. Especially doing this online, I think could be really fun because everyone's in their home and you can turn off the screen and like practice. It could be so fun. So I have some upcoming workshops showing up. So on April 26th, I have Mind Melting Erotic Spanking. And then on May 1st, I have another Pleasure Mastery workshop where I'm talking about the erotic blueprints and how you're wired for pleasure. So I'm going to put that information in the link. And we're going to end this, I think, by like giving 3 claps and a kiss. Is there any type of kiss you would like like a seductive kiss from all of us?
I want like your inner panther. That was cute.
Okay, hang on. I have some G. So these are my claws from.
Yes.
So a panther kiss would probably be like this. Wait, 3 claps. Yes. Okay, thank you everyone. And if you want to join, we will see you next Friday for squirting and female ejaculation.
Thank you all so much.